Welcome back, one and all, to another edition of Off the Record. Now, if you're a frequent listener, you know that there's nobody laughing, and you see that there's nobody laughing on the video because Mamba is not here tonight. He texted us earlier this afternoon. He goes, "Yo, I forgot that I got to go to Vegas tonight, so I'm out." How do you forget that you're going halfway across the country? I don't know the answer to that. Maybe Tyler Monn, maybe Too Tall, maybe Toby Christie can help me answer that question. We'll see. So let's introduce our panel tonight a little bit more formally. We got spotter and 9-time winner this season, 9 times. Hell of a year so far for Tyler Monn, spotter of the 5 car for Kyle Larson. We got Too Tall, Michael Maddill, who is the rear suspension mechanic for the 24 car in the Cup Series. And we have new Charlotte resident, Toby Christie of the Final Lap Weekly fame and TobyChristie.com. Fellas, thank you for joining me. Hope we're doing well. Let's start off with the winner from this past weekend. Tyler, win number 9. Are you tired of this yet?
No, you never get tired of a win. That's for sure. Really, I thought, Kansas worked out for us, but the one to beat really was our teammate. I felt like the 24 was definitely better than us. And I think we were a little even with the 9, but yeah, the 24 showed speed and just worked out for us in right time. But no, never get tired of winning for sure.
Too Tall, what happened? Come on. He said you guys were the car to beat. So what happened?
Man, I don't know. It's hard for me to say because believe it or not, I wasn't at the racetrack this past weekend with COVID. I haven't been traveling as much, but from the couch, I mean, obviously the car looked really fast. It's good to watch the races actually and like kind of hear what people have to say to us about us. So from that perspective, yeah, it was great. I think our meetings were pretty good today. Team wise, I think the morale is still high. So it's coming. I know it's coming.
Yeah, it's got to be. Toby, we've covered the sport all year long, obviously. We've come pretty accustomed to seeing those Hendrick cars up front, especially the 5 and the 24, haven't we?
Oh yeah, they've been there. The 24, especially here lately, has been a huge, awesome, pleasant surprise. They've been running towards the front, and like you're saying, if they don't win in the next couple of races to close out the season, I'll be very surprised. I know there haven't been any not championship 4 winners in the final race since this format was installed, but if anybody's going to do it at this point, I think the 24 is a pretty strong candidate for that.
Yeah, Willie B's been pretty quick today, or not this season at least, especially in the last couple of weeks. Tyler and Michael, I want to get something out the way first. Since you guys are technically teammates, have you guys like worked with each other in the past? Do you guys know each other? I mean, I'm sure that you guys have probably crossed paths at least once or twice before.
I'm sure we've probably seen each other in a garage, but no, I think this is the first year that we actually met each other and worked in the same shop, I guess, and being around, teammate wise. But before that, I mean, he's Too Tall. I mean, that name goes everywhere. Throughout the whole garage, everybody knows who Too Tall is. So probably not before this. We really didn't meet each other until this year.
Yeah.
I would agree
with that. Yeah.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I'm kind of in the garage area. I'm kind of hard to miss. So it is what it is.
Also, Too Tall, do you do some racing yourself?
I participate in racing events is probably the best way to say it. A few years ago, I bought a mini outlaw kart to run out at Millbridge. This year, I built a micro to run out at Millbridge, and I've ran probably 5 or 6 races this year, and it's been more bad than good. I like to go and just build a car and have fun with it. Bring some buddies out, have a couple beers and a couple laughs, and spend a bunch of money, unfortunately.
I think I saw the car today, actually. You have it over at Off Axis Paint, right?
Yeah, it's actually where I'm at right now. I was kind of hoping to set up over by the car because it's kind of my pride and joy. But if you've never been to Off Axis Paint up here in Mooresville, it's what's the best way? It's the cornucopia of shops, I think, in Mooresville, because you've got helmet painters, you've got myself. Ricky Rackman is here with his cat house stuff. We've got a guy doing media stuff, Alpha Vision, and then Tim Whitaker that used to work at Penske is kind of doing his own little side project with Sonic cleaning in the back, and then plus my mess. So it's an interesting place. But obviously the best helmet painters in Mooresville and arguably the country. So
yeah,
definitely. And they're
just
cool
a quick
guys
plug.
too.
just a quick plug for them guys.
Yeah, gotta plug them. They do great work, so we gotta plug them. For those that may not have seen you before Too Tall, how tall are you? Are you too tall?
So if you've seen my car, you've seen the 5 and the 19 in there. So for a long time around here, I used to tell everybody that I was 5'19", just to get the confusion out there. You know, maybe a few many trips, too many
Trying to
trips
do
to the
some
bar,
math right now.
explaining that. It's 6'7".
Wow.
So
that is
no, I did
tall.
not play basketball.
That's unfortunate for you, probably.
I have talents, and none of them are athletic. So
good thing you picked racing. You're doing okay for yourself.
Yeah.
Tyler, this is your first season working with Hendrick Motorsports specifically and spotting the number 5 car, Too Tall. I know that you've been at HMS for a couple of years or a few years now. Let's talk about Tyler first. I know that like getting this spotting gig was kind of an unconventional way and how it happened, but once you kind of got the spotting gig with Kyle and you started hitting the ground running literally and started racking off these wins back to back to back, and now you got 9 of them, you're knocking on the door of double digits. Was there a specific moment like early on in the season when you said to yourself, okay, I know Kyle's a great driver. I know that Hendrick's a great organization. I think we may have something cooking here.
Yeah, for sure. In the beginning of the year, you know, you go to Daytona, that's your first race together. You got practice together. And I'm not going to say I wasn't up there on top of the spotter stand, not nervous about it, because I was. I mean, make sure it's in a hole, you know, if we do a mock run, make sure, you know, put them in a good spot. And we just, after a while, the first couple of races, you know, I felt like we clicked okay at the Daytona 500 for us being first race together at a super speedway. I mean, I think the spotter really means a lot at, you know, Daytona and Talladega. So once it went there, I felt like we were okay. And then a couple races, and when we went to Vegas and we won Vegas, I felt like after that, you know, we started really clicking more and got comfortable with each other and knew what he likes to hear on the radio and know what he wants to hear and everything. So that's pretty much the key. And then, yeah, it's been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it's been really good for us, and it's clicked, and I hope it don't stop anytime soon for sure.
Give us a spark note, some quick synopsis of where you spotted before you got to where you are this year with Kyle and the 5 team, because you've been around the game for a handful of years. You just haven't really been in victory lane on a consistent basis like this with Kyle.
Yeah, for sure. So probably I started spotting in 2013 for a late model deal. Dave Moody owned a late model, and I used to help him on the side. I was a mechanic when I first came down here to North Carolina, and would help them guys out. And he came up to me one night. He's like, "Hey, we don't have a spotter." He's like, "Can you do it?" I'm like, "No, I didn't want to do it. I was against it." So I ended up going and doing it, and did pretty well, and did it ever since. And then I went up and did some ARCA stuff and with Mason Mitchell and them guys. And then
nice trophy in the back.
2017, I think I started doing maybe the end of 16. I started doing cup stuff or Rickware racing and stuff like that, and was Bobby Daughter over at Xfinity and was doing all that. So I feel like I have experience in spotting. I just never cut my big break until this year. So I always enjoyed it. I enjoyed the mechanic sides too. I was a mechanic for a while before I even started spotting. And even when I was spotting, I was still being a mechanic. So I originally came down here to do a pit crew deal and went into the mechanic things, and went back into ARCA. You know, I was still doing mechanic stuff and spotting during the race weekends, and until I started doing full-time cup, and then I got out of the mechanic stuff and just spotted. You know, I started off with actually Carl Long, did cup races and Xfinity races, and then Bobby Daughter, and then Rick Ware. I was with Rick Ware 2 years full-time. And I was glad that I could do that. I was glad that I was there. Obviously, you always want your big break and you want to own a big team, but I think it showed who I like a lot of experience. It gave me a lot of experience. Yeah, not running up front, but just knew the atmosphere of the Cup Series and knew what was around, and just, you know, you adapt to the rules and everything. And I'm very glad. I mean, there's people that get their break without even doing that, and I felt like I'm one of those people that started from the bottom and worked my way up and worked hard at what I was doing, and to be where I'm at today is pretty unreal.
Rick Ware to Hendrick Motorsports, damn.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Pretty good glow up.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. Yeah. It's never would have thought about it last year, I can tell you that. So
yeah. Toby, what you got?
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing is actually, I think you mentioned it was nice to kind of work your way up from the smaller teams to being at Hendrick. Now, I think that might have actually also given you some much needed experience, because there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens back in the pack. And I think there's a lot more spotting that has to be done back there that may have actually shaped who you are as a spotter today, now that you're out the front of the pack.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's different. It's way different. I mean, and people I think don't realize, you're spotting for back marker team, and yeah, it's a lot of work. I feel like now that you run up front, you put a lot more work behind scenes and watching races and film and knowing what's going on now. But like back then, you were just trying to keep that guy out of the way, keep him, under control and finish the race. And if you get a top 25 finish, that's a good day for them guys. And yeah, it was a lot of work, and it helped me. It helped me who I am today. And I think a lot of people probably can look back at that and say, it's a good thing he did that, because I think it has helped him and built me as a spotter.
Too Tall, how about you? How did you get your start in the industry? I know that you've been at Hendrick for a little bit, and you actually are from the Phoenix area, so you'll be going home in a couple of weeks. That'll be a nice little homecoming for you. But give us a little primer on what got you started in this entire journey that is NASCAR Cup Series racing.
So pretty quick, like just being around my uncle was always the racer in the family. Being, in Colorado at the time, he raced dirt modifieds and stuff. And that's kind of how I, as a young kid, got into racing, was watching him. Kind of quit watching when we moved to Phoenix until my grandpa really started following NASCAR again. Went to a few races, at PIR, kind of got the itch. And then basically in high school, I found out that you could be a traveling mechanic on a race team. Back then, I had my own go-kart, I had a dirt street stock and stuff, and kind of had the opportunity to either move up as a race car driver, a local race car driver, or move to North Carolina. And here I am 13 years later. Basically, I had a friend in Arizona was buying transmissions from a guy here in Mooresville. It was a transmission shop. They supplied transmissions and gears to a lot of the like Busch Series back then, or Nationwide Series truck teams. Never even really looked inside a transmission before, and just started tearing them apart, cleaning them up, to the point where within that 2 years of working there, I was building transmissions and gears. I think at that time we were doing stuff for RCR and Robbie Gordon. And then I got a break. Joe Gibbs Racing was hiring somebody to do their teardown stuff in the transmission and gear room. So I went and did that. I worked in the gear room at Gibbs from 2011 till 2014. 2015, I switched over to the test team with the wheel force car. I traveled to all the tests that year. I had started traveling the year before with Darian on the 11 car with Denny and stuff, went to a few races with them. So in 2015, I was on the test team. I think I went to 17 tests that year, and 33 or 34 of the 36 races that year too, with the 19 car.
A lot of miles.
With Darian and Carl. So that was a good year. 2016, I actually went down to the Xfinity shop, traveled full-time as a underneath guy. That year was probably hands down my best year as a mechanic, because we had Kyle Busch, we had Sam Hornish and Denny Hamlin in victory lane that year. The next year was with Matt Tift. And then towards the end of that year, Darian had reached out to me again and said that, he was going to be crew chiefing for William Byron. And I had watched William Byron like step on us all year in the Xfinity series. So I figured, I've always wanted to be on the Cup side, full-time as a mechanic. I think that's kind of like your peak goal, is obviously to be in the Cup garage. So I went for it, and here we are 4 years later.
That's an awesome story. And while you were giving us that unreal synopsis, we got our fourth and final guest joining us tonight. Ryan B, what took you so long, man? We've been waiting.
My bad. Was flying from North Carolina back to California. We're spending a couple days here visiting family for the holiday rush. So flight was a little delayed. So jumping on now. Thanks for having me.
Of course, all good. Yeah, Mamba was telling me that you actually recently moved down to North Carolina, but you're from California originally. So now you're going back home from your new home. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty wild, huh?
Yeah, it is weird to get used to, but it's nice that you're spending some time at home. It's always good.
Yeah.
So Ryan, you're from the off-road world, as I've been told, and the research that I did on you. And a little birdie also told me that you kind of are family friends with the Johnsons, the 7-time champ Jimmy Johnson. That's pretty cool. That's like a third Hendrick Motorsports little, I guess you can say, arm branch that we have in today's show.
Totally, yeah. No, it's pretty cool. Obviously, we grew up in the same town. We all grew up in El Cajon, grew up racing dirt bikes at Verona together, and all of us made our way back to North Carolina, following our dreams of racing.
That's awesome. Yeah. Toby, I did not think that we would have 3 guests affiliated in somehow, some way with Hendrick Motorsports, but here we are. What'd you know?
Yeah. It's the degrees of separation. It's just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. Let's talk a little bit about this weekend at Kansas real quick. Let's start with the winner, Tyler. It was really windy. And Freddie was talking on DBC that like his big ass almost got blown off the spotter stand. I'm sure that you could probably feel it up there too. And Kyle, I know he may have brushed the wall a little bit, so the drivers could feel it on the track too. Everybody seemed to be hitting the wall.
Yeah, it was super windy, and it picked up all of a sudden. Like the one time I had to like hold onto the rail, and I told Cliff on channel 2, I'm like, I'm gonna need a cable rope up here to tie me down. And it was super windy, and you could tell it was super windy for Kyle on the racetrack. You know, there was times where I would be spotting getting into turn 3. And he'd come on the front straightaway and say, "Hey, just don't talk to me getting into 3. I got my hands full because of the wind, you know, trying to get in there." So, it's super windy at Kansas, but you know, I made it. It was cold. It was super cold, but yeah, it was definitely windy. And I think, Too Tall wasn't there, but I seen that the pit box thing came down and hit Rudy in the head, and yeah, it was super windy. It picked up all of a sudden when the weather came.
Maybe it was good you weren't there, Too Tall. You might have been in the line of fire there.
Yeah, we probably would have had to put some tungsten brakes in my pants to keep me from flying around.
Not fun for Ruby. Man, you saw that, right, Toby?
Oh yeah, the wind in Kansas is always crazy anyway. But yeah, when it starts picking up stuff and knocking things over and bonking people, that's not fun.
No, not at all. Ryan, did you get a chance to watch the Kansas race this Sunday, or were you busy?
Yeah, you know it. I'm a huge fan of NASCAR. Grew up around it a lot, obviously, with my family racing with the Johnsons and whatnot. But I got to watch it. Great race. Pretty exciting. Man, what can I say? Kyle Larson is on a tear, man. Anytime you can get on a roll like that, you become unstoppable, because not only does your mental side of things keep rolling well, you become, basically unbeatable. Got the car, got the team, got the confidence, and you just start rolling, wins start clicking off.
So Ryan, you come from a dirt off-roading background, and you see your friend and former competitor on the dirt, and Jimmy Johnson, going to the NASCAR Cup Series and becoming a 7-time champion. Was there ever like a fire inside you that said, maybe I wonder what I could do if I tried this NASCAR stuff?
Negative. Not 1 ounce of me, believe it or not. I know my lane, and I truly love racing off-road. I grew up racing dirt bikes and motocross and had a lot of fun doing that. I love racing on dirt. I love jumping. I love, just the thrill of dirt racing, I guess, for me. So knowing my lane, knowing where my skill set has been polished, I got no ambition to go to NASCAR or go race anything like that, but looks cool. I'm a super fan of it. Enjoy watching it, but definitely going to stay with off-road racing.
What about NASCAR on dirt? Would you entertain that?
Ooh,
I would definitely entertain some truck races on dirt or some car races on dirt, but I don't know. I still like jumping.
What if they added the track with jumps?
I'm in.
Sheldon Creed does off-road stuff too, right? I think you're good buddies with him.
What's that?
Sheldon Creed, he's done some off-road stuff as well.
Yep. Me and Sheldon grew up racing Lucas Oil off-road together quite a bit. And now he's living out there, and we've got to spend quite a bit of time recently hanging out. Been trying to help him here and there when I can. I got some free time with his micro and learning about, racing in circles.
Tyler, what would it be like to spot an off-road race? I feel like that would just be chaos on steroids.
Yeah, watching them guys. We were somewhere a couple weeks ago when we were watching it on TV in the holler, and I told them guys in the holler, I'm like, these guys, they beat and bang and jump. the jump and stuff. And I remember at Texas Speedway, I think last year, or the year before, that they ran there and got to see them there. And they're very entertaining. I don't know about spotting them. I think it would be still there clear, then he door slams him in. It's on the driver's spotter, but I don't. It is pretty cool. It's cool to watch, and I always enjoyed, and I grew up actually racing motocross, so came from a dirt background, so it's cool that Ryan came from that too. And it just broken a lot of bones, so he had to get away from it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. The bones and the trips to the hospital definitely get sold, so that's where I found my way to the cage and four wheel.
That's why you didn't play basketball, right? Too tall. We don't want trips to the hospital.
It's dangerous getting off the bench,
A long walk to the scorer's table to check in.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
I really walk through bubble gum.
I'll tell you though, being a rear end mechanic for a NASCAR race car, it's probably a very stressful job. I cannot imagine the stress that you would have having that same title and that same job for an off-road truck, because those things are jumping, they're coming down, and no matter what, gravity is going to do what it wants. So those rear ends and those springs, they better work.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, the shock tuning is a big part of our game, and having the truck beefy enough to take, jumps. Some of these jumps that we're doing, we're 25, 30 feet in the air, and the jumps are 100, 110 foot long. So there's some big jumps that we can do in these machines, which is pretty crazy when you think of it, like, with what not only the NASCAR side does with their trucks and their cars, but then to go to the extreme opposite of what we do with it, from the engineering standpoint and the physics and mechanical side of it, of what we can do with these trucks is pretty phenomenal. It's pretty eye-opening for sure.
Now, another thing, Ryan, as far as NASCAR goes, there's been a big amount of conversation here recently about driver etiquette. I know a lot of the drivers are kind of talking about how there's no driver code anymore, and these guys are just running into each other and all sorts of crazy things. What kind of driver code is there on dirt? I know it's a little harder because the cars and trucks are a little out of control and stuff like that, but what is it on your end where you feel like, okay, that guy just crossed the line? Like what takes that over the line?
Our end's a little rougher, obviously. It's kind of more like the elbows up, supercross, we beat and bang. It's a normal thing. Body panels are constantly flying off. That's, we have fiberglass bodies specifically because there is a lot of bumping and banging and rubbing. But I would say it's pretty similar, to like the cup stuff that, if you dump somebody or spin them out, it's kind of the driver etiquette of being, dirty. But the beating and the banging and slide jobs and door slams and stuff like that is pretty normal in our sport. It's kind of expected. It's coming every weekend. It's part of it. So every weekend you go to the track with 3 or 4 front bumpers, 3 or 4 rear bumpers, and a couple sets of Nerf bars, and you expect it. You're ready for it. So there is some driver etiquette. It's probably a little looser than what you guys see, but there is some for sure.
Now, I know recently, what was it, Lamastus was the one throwing the fire extinguishers on stuff. Have you ever gotten that mad where you're throwing fire extinguishers at people?
No, our stuff isn't that bad. It's kind of, sometimes a little circus over there, a little Wild West, what they got going on with that series. But I almost thought it was planned. I thought it was a little.
It did feel that way, didn't it? It was just wild.
It reminded me like some WWF or WWE stuff going on there. Which hey, it worked. Look how many views they got on YouTube and everything else. So congrats to them and kudos to them for, I guess, getting in the situation and playing it right. But we're definitely not that crazy.
Real quick on the playoff versus the non-playoff driver debate, I want to talk to the 2 Hendrick Motorsports employees here. Let's start off with you, Tyler. Being a spotter, I'm sure going down the stretch, especially when your car is leading and winning, as you and Kyle have been the past couple of weeks, are you going up and down the spotter stand just saying, hey, can you take the bottom, or what lane are you going to take, so that you can relay that information to Kyle? Or is it kind of every man for themselves in terms of whether or not you're in the playoffs, you've been eliminated, you didn't qualify at all? How have you seen that kind of sliding scale? Because it seems like this year more than ever, it's kind of been more of a topic of conversation.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously you got your backmarker teams and stuff like that you go up against, and not saying you're running down the spotters fan trying to get to them and trying to let them know, hey, we want the top or something like that. I really haven't done that pretty much all year. I will say Kansas, I did do that for a couple of guys just because when you're spotting, you're starting to look out front ahead and knowing what lap carts you're getting ready to get to and know what lane they're running. And Kansas, really, the top lane became the preferred lane for them guys to keep their momentum up in the back marker deal, and they would make speed up there as much as they could. But something that I came into is we were up against the fence on the last 10 laps with the 9 running us down, and we needed the top. And I knew Kyle wanted the top. I didn't feel like if we went to the bottom, I think we'd lose too much speed to the 9 and stuff like that. So yeah, in situations like that, you go down and you say something. A lot of them guys are nice because I was in that spot. I remember last year, previous year,
literally have lived that.
Guys came down to me and asked me, hey, can we take the top? And it really shows when guys do something like that, and it pays off. And we cut them a break, whether it's if we're running towards a stage and them guys are in front of us, and I think it's just a big favor deal. So if them guys cut us a break, we'll eventually cut them break somewhere, whether it keeps them on the lead lap and stuff like that. But I'm a strong believer that it happened to me in the Xfinity Series this past weekend spot for Noah, that a non-playoff driver kind of took us out last weekend. But them guys are there to race too. Like it's not. I don't think it would be right for them to be okay. You didn't make the playoffs, so you can't race, right? Like they're still there trying to make a thing, and I think the 24 is in the same boat. I think they're just because they're knocked out, they've showed a ton of speed and they've been up front, and they should race us just like they would anybody else on any given weekend. Because at the end of the day, I think the good car is going to show and win, right? If you're in the playoffs and you can't beat that car, then well, you got to go back and go back to make a better game plan or something like that. So I'm all about it. It's upsetting that stuff like that happens, that people make mistakes like that. And, that wasn't, I don't think that was an accident or a mistake. I think that was just driving over his head Saturday for us, and put us in a bad spot. Now it does get you thinking like, well, he's not even a playoff guy. He shouldn't be racing us like that. But if you're racing, I mean, we ran 6 to 8 laps 3 wide and never touched each other. And eventually it was going to happen. But it's just give or take a little bit. I'm okay with non-playoff guys racing us hard, and I think they should show up there to race. They want to go get a win, and it means something for them. I would be in the same way to race people.
Yeah.
In the playoff.
Yeah.
Totally understand where you're coming from. We've had some situations in the off-road truck stuff too, where it's, you want those guys to still race, but you also want them to be respectful too and show some respect. I think that's the biggest thing, is for some of those non-playoff guys to just be respectful of what's going on around them, and know what's going on around them. Be there, know what's going on around you at all times, to where if you see those chase guys come, and show them a little respect, you'd want if you were there too,
Yeah. I mean, Larson's done the same thing at Homestead. I think a few years back, he was the class of the field, and he kind of laid over for the championship 4 to allow them to kind of settle things out there. But I just want to end real quick on this topic with Too Tall, because it seems like Tyler Reddick has been the thorn in your guys' side for the past couple of weeks here, right? I mean, we had the road rule, what happened at the end of the race there, and he took responsibility for that. Doesn't really change the outcome. And then he's kind of been making some bonsai moves. He did some this past weekend at Kansas with the 5 and the 24. So personally, right? Like, you're working on the car during the week. You are a integral member of this race team, but you're not at the racetrack on the weekend. You're watching on television like the rest of us. So when you see somebody like Reddick, or anybody for that matter, race your car a little bit harder or bump into you when it wasn't really necessary, what's your reaction? Like, what are you doing watching this race? Are you being like, oh my God, are you kidding? Not again? Or do you kind of understand?
I mean, I get it. I totally understand it, but I'm definitely short fused also. I remember when Reddick came out to North Carolina to start racing, and I remember Rockingham 2012 Can-Am race, and we were like, who the hell is this Tyler Reddick guy racing against Brett Moffitt, who's trying to win a Can-Am championship, against Corey LaJoie. I think I was with Bubba that year. I think we had a shot at it still. And and Kyle Larson also. Yeah, Kyle Larson ended up winning the championship, but Tyler Reddick won the race. And I think it was because he kind of used up Brett Moffitt, if I remember right. And that's just how Tyler Reddick is. He's aggressive. I don't hate him for it. Am I a little sour that he took us out at the Roval? Of course, but I think in this industry, you have to be able to move past that. And I think we've got it in our team's mentality is always looking forward. You know, I saw William being interviewed at the Roval after that had happened. He was testing the next gen car, and somebody asked him about, you know, moving forward and stuff. And he's like, I'm already over that. I'm already thinking about, you know, this week's race. It sucks, but this team, you know, still has stuff to prove. And winning's not out of the question. We've definitely shown that the last couple of weeks. As far as like the playoff drivers racing non-playoff drivers, vice versa, I would be extremely upset if I was out of the playoffs and we just laid over for, you know, playoff guys. Like, you've been racing with these guys for 30 something weeks at this point. These guys race around each other. They understand how one another race, but do it with some sort of respect, you know. You know, I was proud of William a few weeks ago, you know, side drafting the hell out of somebody on the inside lane, you know, going through the corners. You know, it's something we really hadn't seen out of William a whole lot. And I think he understands the speed that we have and that we do have potential to win these races. And I don't think he was really doing it to a playoff driver. But I would hope that, you know, if Kyle Busch is there, he would still race that guy, you know, to go for a win. You know, if we knock Kyle Busch out of the playoffs, it's only going to help our teammates. Yeah. If we knock Denny Hamlin out or Martin Truex, Brad Keselowski, any of those guys, it's only helping our teammates and our organization. I'm not saying go wreck the guy, but race him like you have for the last 30 plus weeks.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. All right, let's pivot a little bit, because a lot of the conversation around the industry this week was around Formula One and their race at COTA in Austin. There was a lot of buzz, and rightfully so, around that race. It was unbelievable attendance-wise in your former home state, Toby Christie of Texas, yep. Obviously. I mean, the ratings in terms of television, NASCAR still outdid Formula One, but I think in terms of the 18 to 49 demographic, that specific TV rating, Formula One actually outdid NASCAR. And I know there's been a lot of conversation about, Formula One's coming for NASCAR in the States, and it's so much more popular. Drive to Survive this, Drive to Survive that. There's a lot of he said, she said, and there's a lot of facts out there that are kind of being ignored. The facts are this, right? And I'll go to Toby first on this, since you are the closest thing to a native Texan that we have. COTA's been on the schedule for almost a decade at this point. It hadn't been on the schedule last year because of COVID. There has been historically one race in the United States. Next year, there's going to be two, and possibly in 2 years, there's going to be three. Formula One is on the upswing in America. There's no debating that, and the ratings have played that out. The interest with the Netflix show, that has played that out. But for people that are saying, you know, NASCAR may be in jeopardy of losing the number one moniker of motorsports in America, I'm curious your guys' perspective, because personally, I think that's a bit too much. It's a bit of a stretch right now, considering that Formula One is the world's most premier form of motorsport, and they got one race a year in the States, and NASCAR has been the top dog for a while, and there's 30 some odd races a year. So Toby, you are the native Texan on the show. What are your thoughts on this entire debate for this whole week?
I think what F1 did that should open the eyes of NASCAR is they showed that if you make it about more than just the racing and you make it a full experience. So you've got, you know, musical acts that people care about, not 1980s hair bands that people don't remember who they are anymore. as your main acts, I think people will show out in droves for at least that. If you have other things around the track that are exciting and new, and just you'll bring people out naturally for those events, and they stay for the race, which is a bonus. But I don't think you, at this point, can go into a sporting event or any kind of event like that and use just that as the thing to lure people out that maybe are on the fence about going, especially to an outdoor event that's 3-4 hours long. So I think there's a lot of things we can take from what just happened at COTA. And you mentioned it's a race that's been going on for about a decade plus now at this point. So it wasn't like something new and exciting that we've never seen before. And the Formula One racing, although the race did turn out to be a pretty decent run for the win between Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, it wasn't, F1's not known for their incredible wheel-to-wheel racing week in and week out. So people go into it knowing that, and they still went. So there's ways to attract people to tracks. And I think a lot of it is the attractions they had around the track and part of the race weekend going into the race.
Yeah. Ryan, Denny Hamlin was saying, we're racing in the Cup Series side by side, 2 and 3 wide for the entire race. And Formula One, you can predict 95% of the time who's going to win the thing. But somehow there's still all this interest and all this buzz around that. I think the same could probably be said of you guys on the dirt with off-road racing, right? I mean, it's very unpredictable. It's very close, and it's very action-packed throughout the entirety of the event and the entire season, right? So I guess you can see where Denny's coming from in the sense of something needs to change. Not necessarily, we don't know what that is, but why is something that the on-track product is very predictable and to some people very stale and boring getting so much more interest than something that in the NASCAR sense is leaps and bounds ahead?
Yeah, and we see that a lot from the off-road side. We're basically like NASCAR looking at F1, where off-road's looking at NASCAR. We're going, okay, our racing's questionably better or as good. The venues are just as cool. We got just as big a turnouts at these races. It's just kind of like that hidden gem in off-road that or in motorsports, I should say, that a lot of people don't really know about or haven't really had a chance to see and understand a whole lot. So I can see Denny's point and totally understand where he's coming from. And it's like, man, what do we do to be the best, or what do we do to be on top? Just like as if you were a race team or whatever, you're trying to beat the best guy. Formula One, like you said, 90% of the times you can predict the outcome of pretty close to what's going to happen. The racing really isn't that good, but they have a good product. Like you said, the event that supports the racing, like it can't just be a standalone, just racing event. You have to have multiple forms of attraction around the racing to help support the racing. It can't just be standalone. And I think every series that understands that and captures that will be the ones that survive and be successful for years to come.
Yeah, I agree. It's about the event, right, Toby?
Yeah, definitely. There has to be more there than just the racing. I love racing. Davey, you love racing. All the guys here on this chat right now love racing. But you're wanting to, yeah, of all forms. But we're wanting to pack the seats and all these things. You got to have more there than just racing to capture everyone. Bring the whole family in with something for everyone. Tyler, what's your thoughts on this?
So just, sitting here and thinking about it, I think growing up as a kid, going to NASCAR races back in the late 90s and 2000s, through the whole thing, they had more to entertain family-wise. The one thing that really sticks out to me is they used to, at Richmond Raceway, we used to go almost every year. They had the Looney Tunes cars that would bring, and they'd run these different cars, and they bring so much more, whether it's for the kids, the adults. You look back when they had tobacco products, when they had, the whole, everything else they had for adults to go in these tobacco tents and everything else. Mm-hmm. They had a lot more at a racetrack than what they do now. I'm not saying that they don't at a NASCAR event now, but there was just so much more to do back then. And I just think that really plays back into my head. But I also think, that would help NASCAR to bring people, go back and run. Obviously Looney Tunes is, not outdated, but, it's not as popular as kids don't know today and just stuff like that. But, there's always something you can tie around that, they used to run the rock and roll stuff and the bands and stuff like that, different cars like that. And it drew people like that. But one thing that really stands out to me is in NASCAR, you have your NASCAR fans. You're always going to have your NASCAR fans. I can't tell you how many times I walk through the garage if we're at a road course. Man, I don't like watching that road racing, or I don't like that road course racing. You hear that from fans all the time. So I think it comes down to a deal is a lot of people think, from the TV standpoint, you said about the TV people watching this past weekend that NASCAR had more ratings. Well, I just think I bet you, I'm not saying this, but I just feel like our ratings go down when we go to a road course, and we're adding more road courses each year. And I enjoy road racing. I enjoy F1. I enjoy IndyCar, off-road, whatever it is. I like it. It's nothing against that. It's just, I feel like you have your certain stand of people, and you have to find a way to draw new fans in, whether it's kids, younger generation, because NASCAR is all about older generation, old stock car, dirt racing. That's what people grew up around. And I feel like a difference today is that, back then people would be like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, let's go get our car. Somebody has a Mustang. Let's work on it. Let's try to make it faster. Let's do that.
It's different.
And now kids today don't do that, right? Their cell phones are a big thing, and just not involved in racing. So something has to come to, and it's don't have to be F1. It's all types of racing. Something that stands out to me, you go to an NHRA event, you watch a drag car go down the line when 3 seconds. But something that they do is when you buy a grandstand ticket, you're right up against, you can watch them guys right, and they're working in the pit area the whole 9 yards. I know the whole COVID deal played a factor in that, and hopefully that we get away from that soon. But just, you have to find something that's going to draw a younger generation to it, because that's what we're getting to. And it's just younger generations like us. I'm sure we all grew up watching, NASCAR as a kid. I sure did. And that's what kind of made me get in the sport. But now you have to find something that's going to draw a younger generation, because the older generation, I still think, can sit down on a TV and watch, or you sit down on their couch and watch TV and watch a NASCAR race, and they enjoy it. But it's just about bringing a younger generation around, and maybe with NASCAR doing this next gen deal, bringing a different car around, it's more up sport beat. And I think, I like the new car coming out, and I think it's going to be good. And I think it will bring different people around the sport. And I think NASCAR is making a good way like that. But between that and F1, I think you're just going to have your fans, right? You're going to have your NASCAR fans, you're going to have your F1 fans, and I don't think it'll ever get to NASCAR not being the United States greatest racing.
Yeah.
I don't think that'll ever go. I don't think F1 will ever take that over.
Yeah. I did notice though at the F1 race, Too Tall, if you went there, you may have been the third tallest person there, because Shaq was there, Chris Bosh was there. You probably would have been on the podium in terms of tall people there. So maybe you should make a trip next year.
I don't know who made that meme. Was that Jensen Button? I think tweeted it or put it out on
Shaq being like,
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know who made that, but
Formula One tweeted it out, like the actual series account.
Yeah. As far as Formula One and NASCAR competing against each other for the U.S. turf, you're talking apples and oranges, in my opinion. Formula One's budget. A Formula One team's budget is like an entire series of, the Xfinity series.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even fair. I mean, but I think it's apples and oranges, and just the racing in general. Like you guys talk about Denny Hamlin, you take a 95% chance you're going to guess it right on who wins the race that day. Our racing's a lot more closer, definitely going to some short tracks coming up. You're going to see people beating and banging off of each other. And that's old NASCAR. And that's personally what I love is I'm a short track guy. I've always been a short track guy. I appreciate the 1.5 miles, and I obviously appreciate Daytona and Talladega. The road courses don't really do it for me. I'm a big Formula One fan. I love watching Formula One. But for the stock cars, I have a hard time grasping it, because I always feel like it comes down to, fuel mileage. And to me, that reminds me of, back in the 90s and the 2000s of, where we had, I think, smaller fuel cells. So we were always waiting on, it was always a fuel mileage race. Or, I don't think NASCAR has to worry about competing with Formula One. As far as turf goes in the US, obviously NASCAR's here for, 33, 36 races out of the year. Formula One comes here once a year, going on twice, potentially 3. And with that being said, if you look at the Formula One schedules, 23, 24 races a year, and they go to different areas of the world, and they have huge capacity venues where I think at Spa, they get over 250,000 people just at Spa alone. Well, it's because they only go to that racetrack once a year, where not to hate on Pocono, but going to Pocono twice is kind of boring for me. The best thing that happened to Pocono was they made it a double header, where you've got 2 races in one weekend. That fan base is there and staying there because they know they only have one opportunity to come to that racetrack. Where Formula One comes to COTA once a year, you only have that one opportunity to go see a Formula One race. I think that NASCAR can learn some stuff from what Formula One's done. I think the Netflix show got a lot of people into it. Yeah. I enjoyed the Netflix show. I think I've learned to dislike drivers from it. I've learned to like drivers from it.
Yeah, you're not the only one.
I think NASCAR can do something like that. Obviously, Formula One has the leg up on it, but you need a behind the scenes show for NASCAR to kind of not just, to show the livelihood that the drivers have, flying on their jets to the racetrack every week. I mean, we fly in jets to the racetrack every week, but, in the shop, in the garage area, setting up the garage area, hell, ride with one of our redneck hauler drivers to the racetrack one weekend and Absolutely. Show that, I think that would get that perspective back. I remember, what was that, NASCAR 24/7 back in the day? Mm-hmm. People lost interest, I think, in NASCAR around that time because all they showed was a NASCAR driver sitting on his couch, with his kids Monday through Thursday and then flying out to the racetrack. Show something of interest that people can relate to. And you would gain a fan base back, I think. And maybe somebody that's never watched a NASCAR race, if you put it on Amazon, Netflix, whatever, exactly. You can kind of show that appeal, to the guy that does change the oil on his minivan every weekend. There's more to NASCAR than just going around in circles for 400 or 500 miles. We're talking about putting weeks and weeks of prep into these race cars every week. And people don't realize that.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I'll chime in with that because obviously not being in the NASCAR world day in and day out, like a lot of you guys, for me, I totally geek out on all the behind the scenes things. Like I'm, being in North Carolina, I've got to go visit a couple of the shops and see some of the things that go on behind the scenes. And as a fan, I find that more enjoyable than knowing that the race car driver, I'm a race car driver or whatever, but knowing that the race car driver, there's more that goes into it besides him sitting on the couch and getting on his private jet and flying to his $1 million motorhome, sitting in his motorhome until they say go time, like let's see some dudes wrenching. Let's see some guys, working on their cars and being involved with their teams and working with their crew chiefs and actually being involved with their programs. I think a lot of people would relate more to that. There's such a disconnect, like you talked about now in a lot of motorsports where a lot of the drivers have no involvement in their team whatsoever other than the time that they get in the race car. I think a lot of people have lost respect for that and lost respect with this whole movement and generation of different types of drivers and where they come from and how they get in the seat. So a lot of people have lost respect for that and knowing that that's the route it's gone to where they've lost interest in racing because they just figure, hey, it's just these guys are getting overpaid or they're paying too much to be there,
Yeah. I think one of the things that's the most exciting thing I've ever seen at an actual racetrack over the years was a few years ago. I was scheduled to have an interview with Morgan Shepherd at Texas Motor Speedway. And Morgan, to his credit, wanted to make the interview happen, but they ran into issues with the car and it wasn't getting through inspection. So they had to, thrash to get the car to work, to get through inspection properly. And I sat there and watched those guys work. By the way, Morgan always dresses great. So he's always got like a dress shirt and nice pants, everything. He's down there on the ground working, thrashing with the team. Legend. And just just watching those guys work that whole time, I was like, we've got to find a way to channel this and show people this is part of what happens. There's more than the drivers turning left. There's a lot going on here. And even the drivers turning left isn't just drivers turning left. But for the casual fan who doesn't know any better, that's all they know. And so the only real NASCAR entertainment stuff we've had in the last few years is Talladega Nights, which is a joking kind of thing. And then The Crew on Netflix, which was also another joking kind of thing. We need something serious that does show people the intricacies to the sport, and that there is more than just a few things that people think stereotypically what's happening.
Yeah, I think Too Tall's point was a really poignant one about, appealing to a different demographic, because if a Drive to Survive series came out on Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu, whatever, NASCAR fans will watch the shit out of it, obviously. But the point is that you're appealing to people that are not NASCAR fans. And I think, Ryan, you could probably have some good perspective on this too, right? Like, hand up, I don't know a whole lot about off-road racing. Like, I want to learn more. My jobs kind of prevent me from getting full bore into that space. But are you telling me that, like, if Netflix, I'm using this as a completely hypothetical, but if there was a Drive to Survive type documentary series behind the scenes, looking at the intricate personalities, what it takes to get the show off the ground every weekend, and all those different types of things about you guys and what you guys do, of course, everybody in your guys' garage and in your guys' series and world would watch it. But that's the thing that appeals to other people, that kind of transcends your individual bubble. And I think that's what Formula One, even though they already were the world's most premier motorsport, that's what they've accomplished here. It just so happens that it's all coming to a head right now, because as we saw, Kansas and Formula One this week were at the same exact time. But Too Tall's point still stands. And I feel like, Ryan, that would kind of be an interesting thing to think about hypothetically for your guys on off-road.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for you guys, like you were saying, the Netflix, what was it, NASCAR All In or whatever, that the show they did, a couple years ago. For you guys, it's kind of like, it's a tank. But for like me and all my crew, we would watch it every week. Every time there was a new episode, we'd be talking about all week in the shop, just because it's something that we didn't know about, we didn't see. So we became more, or bigger fans of NASCAR simply because of that show. So like you guys are saying, if NASCAR had one, or if off-road had one, you would open up a whole new demographic of fans that you didn't even know existed, and they didn't even know that they liked racing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing to debate. Tyler, just real quick. Well, let's say, for example, like somebody was following your guys' team, the 5 team, and Kyle Larson all year long, and they were producing some season-end documentary on, his road to redemption from what happened last year, and now he's a 9-time winner with you. Like, that's something that I feel like would be a really intricate and interesting look at a story that people heard about outside of the sport, right? I mean, people, unfortunately, probably hear Kyle Larson if they're not a NASCAR fan, and they think of what happened on iRacing last year. But if they were to maybe see his name pop up on Netflix and maybe see the description or whatever, again, these are non-NASCAR fans we're talking about, that could turn somebody that's a skeptic or a hater into somebody that is saying, oh, let me give this a chance. Let me watch. Oh, he won 9 times last year. Well, when's the 2022 season start? It's just little things that, could end up being a big, big promoter for NASCAR, more than they ever thought. Because I'm sure F1, when they debuted Drive to Survive, they did not think that it was going to be this big, this fast.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and like you guys said, Too Tall and Ryan, I mean, it would be great for fans to go after. Like I said earlier, there's people out there now that people sit down and watch TV. Netflix is out, Amazon, whatever you can go watch TV on. I mean, that's the generation we're in now. And I just think that if you went behind the scene, take one weekend and have a camera follow us, whether it's the spotter, whether it's the crew guys in the shop, whether it's it don't matter who, anybody on the team. I think it draws a lot. And I think something that we do, and I'm sure Too Tall's probably had to do this, is Hendrick kind of makes us do some videos and post on Twitter and Instagram to give the scenes behind a spotter or a mechanic or an engineer or crew chief, something different than just turning on a TV and watching them race, right? It gives a whole behind the scenes things. I know I've done it a ton this year for Hendrick to do videos and stuff like that. And I really enjoy doing it because you hear back from the fans and they really like what you do. It's something different. They think it's cool. So for them to do something like that would be absolutely amazing. I think it would draw a different crowd in and make it a bigger crowd. And the people that are already watching it, they're going to watch it too. You come out the show, people will sit down and take time and talk about it. Like you said about earlier about, the whole Toby about Talladega Nights and the crew. No, that's just like a juggling thing. Do something serious, document like what these guys are doing, and whether it was Kyle, whether it was anybody on the, whether it's Gibbs driver, Hendrick driver, Stewart Haas driver, it don't matter. Just take them all together and, try to put it together. And I think people would watch it.
Yeah. I think if you captured the effort and the emotion that you guys truly put into that sport, because for me, I look at that sport and just learning what I've learned, it's phenomenal what you guys do. It's truly amazing at the level that and the grand spectrum of how you guys operate and do things. People would dig it. People would totally be into it. And that's what it needs to showcase at this point, I feel. And one, thing that I noticed, I went to the Charlotte race, the Roval, the second one. And one thing I noticed there, everything's so hard for people to see what's going on or see anything behind the scenes. They kick you out at a certain time. You got to have all these special passes. So when you go to a sprint car race or you go to an off-road race, you go to a lot of these races, the pits are wide open to the fans. They can walk around 24/7 through these pits. And I think that's where maybe NASCAR has lost some of that disconnect with some of their fans, because basically it's like you get a scheduled period of time, or you got to spend a ton of money to see anything more than just sitting in the grandstands. Let people see what's really going on. Let them, see what it's about. Yeah. See the effort, see the emotion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know people are probably screaming right now saying, oh, well, what about the Bubba thing coming out on Netflix? Yes, a Bubba thing's coming out on Netflix. So there's no work being done. And NASCAR was also filming kind of a behind the scenes thing before COVID kind of put a damper on things. So NASCAR stuff is coming out on different streaming services, but it was definitely clear that Formula One has made inroads in that coveted 18 to 39 or 49 demographic in the United States. So we had to give them their due there. All right, let's close out the show, guys. Let's talk about Martinsville. I don't give a crap about the racing. Who's ready for some hot dogs? I am ready for some hot dogs, man. Ryan, I know that you obviously are not in the NASCAR space 24/7, but you got to know about the glory and the legend of the Martinsville hot dog, right?
I've heard quite a bit about it. Gator from Brembo's told me some stories that are pretty comical. So obviously, man, one day look forward to getting there. I was hoping to get there this year, but looks like it's going to be pushed off till next year.
All right, Tyler, I know you're going to be at the track. Do you guys get like a whole catering order of hot dogs up on the spotter stand? Please say yes.
No, everybody. Well, yeah, kind of. Everybody's like, I'm going down to get a hot dog, and then they take an order, and a lot of them guys bring them up or something like that. Yeah, it's. I plan on having a couple this weekend.
Yes. As do I. Yeah, you got to bring some home for Too-Tall. If Too-Tall, I assume you're not going to the race.
I am actually going to be a fan.
Love it.
Yeah. So my uncle's huge race fan. He supported me and all my stuff. He's been to several racetracks with me, while I've been working, get him a hot pass and whatnot, get him in the garage. He's yet to be to Martinsville. We're going to drive up Sunday morning, give you a whole race fan experience. So I'll be in the stands hanging out. I'm probably going to have a few hot dogs. Just, it's been a couple years since I've had one. I'll probably find something to, write Too-Tall on and tally it up, how many I've had, and
please,
we'll go from there.
Yes. Do you guys have a record of how many dogs you guys have had over the course of a weekend in your time working in the sport?
I try to limit myself to 3.
Okay, but you say you try. So when you don't try,
no, I usually stick to 3. 3 is my limit.
Okay. I'm a little disappointed. I'm not going to lie. Tyler,
I don't have a huge, I think the most maybe is 4. I'm the same way. 2 to 3. I enjoy them for 100%, but I'm not one to get 5 and then stand back in line and get another 5 and stuff like that. They are good. They're definitely, they're really good.
I feel like Ryan, you're like, you're secretly judging us because you're California kid, like taco, West Coast cuisine. Like, I'm not going to have some of these stupid ass hot dogs.
No, I've heard they're pretty good. So looking forward to trying them for sure.
Yeah, we got to get you out next year. You'll have to try some. Toby, you've never been to Martinsville, I assume, so you've never had.
I have not, but I'm going this weekend. And
Really?
Yeah, I'll be there.
I'll see you there, brother.
Yes. There was a recent study that showed that every time you ingest a hot dog, your life is 30 seconds shorter than it was going to be before the hot dog. I intend on having my life probably be about 1 minute to 2 minutes shorter at the end of this weekend than it was going to be before. So
I raise you 5 minutes. I'm going for 5.
Oh my gosh, you're going big.
Well, the thing is, last time I went, this is pre-pandemic when the hot dog stand was like open and open for business and stuff. I had legitimately, because I was filming like a post-race video and I wanted to get a hot dog in it. But I ended up having like technical difficulties. So I ended up having like 3 hot dogs in a span of like 10 minutes. And then I drove 5 hours home through the night. Miraculously, my stomach was totally fine. So I'm hoping that I have repeated that.
You're like a goat.
I don't know. What can you say? Well, it's been fun chatting with you guys tonight, for real. I know that it's a busy time of year, and I know everybody's excited to kind of relax in a couple weeks in the off season. So Tyler, best of luck this weekend at Martinsville, and best of luck chasing that championship in Phoenix. Too Tall, enjoy your hometown in Phoenix in a couple weeks. I know you're excited to get back there, and you're excited to go to Martinsville this weekend with your uncle. And Ryan, thanks for hopping on as well. We hope to see a lot more of you in the future. And who knows, maybe you'll dip your toe in the NASCAR waters a little bit. And Toby, I will see you this weekend, my friend.
Yes.
Love it. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for listening to another episode of Off the Record. We'll catch you guys next time.